if you're a company, what do? You go hire a brand expert, and then you go hire a packaging design agency, and then you go hire an industrial design agency,
Right.
and then you go hire a digital experience agency, right? And by the time you get to the end, you've had like 5 or 6 different viewpoints for what this thing should be or what this experience should be. With Enlisted, we're able to do that all together rather than have so many different points of view kind of coming in and championing their topic. Because if you ask an industrial designer what's the most important part of a brand, they're going to say the product. You ask a packaging designer, they're going to say, oh, well, obviously the packaging. We've been able to shed that thought here at Enlisted and say, what's the most important thing? The consumer and the experience that we're going to create for them. And all of these different touch points have to ladder up to that deliverable.
So thanks so much for joining us. We've got Beau Euler, CEO of Enlisted and also the founder. Beau, you probably don't remember this. I'm sure you don't. We actually met at a Dieline conference that you spoke at, like right after you launched Urbio. And I remember we were talking in the back and you're like, oh, I'm kind of nervous going up, and you explained what you were doing. And I'm thinking, like, why did Andrew invite this guy to come talk about Urbio, which has nothing to do with packaging? And then you spoke and you kind of shared your story. And I'm like, all right, now I totally get it. It's all about like packaging and product. So, I mean, it's been forever.
Yeah.
And here we are today. So kind of fill in the gaps. Like, what has happened since then?
Totally. Well, thanks for having me on, first of all. Super stoked to be here with you. So lots happened since then. I don't remember when that was, what year it was, but I remember it was a long time ago. And I was thrilled to be able to speak at the conference because like one of the things that the design community forgets at times is that it takes a lot to create a meaningful consumer experience, right? Of a product, of a pack, of a brand. And so it takes so many different kind of touch points of that brand coming together to be one, to be cohesive in order to really create that meaningful experience. And I think that's why Andrew asked me to speak, because my background is industrial design, right? Product design, consumer product design. Went to the Academy of Art in San Francisco to study ID, and was at multiple agencies in San Francisco for industrial design specific. But I was always interested in the bigger picture of, okay, yes, the product is wonderful and that's what these consumers are going to use, but how do they get the product? Well, it's the packaging. Well, how did they get to the packaging? It's the advertising. Well, why did that advertising call their attention? Well, it's because the branding, right? So it's like, how do all those elements come together to create this one cohesive consumer experience? And that's what I've become obsessed with over the last 15 years.
That was seriously, I don't know, like 12 years ago, 10 years ago. It was
forever
a really
ago.
long time ago, man.
Yeah. And Urbio was great. Here's what Urbio was. Urbio was a big science project. Okay. It was as Enlisted as an agency, we're doing all of this work for all of our clients, for everybody else. And we just thought, at what point do we do it for ourselves? And that's what Urbio was. It was the first time that we did it for ourselves to really launch a brand ourselves. And it was a success. And we were on Shark Tank, and we were in Target and Container Store and Museum of Modern Art, and it was really, really fun. And then we sold it to a housewares company so we could just focus on Enlisted and doing that again and again.
That's awesome, man. So you were Enlisted at the point where you launched Urbio?
Correct. Yeah. So Enlisted was founded in 2008. So we're 13 years old now. And then we launched Urbio in 2010, I think, 2011 or so. And then grew that for about 4 years, and then sold that and have focused on Enlisted and then partnering with different startups as well as, larger clients.
Yeah, for sure, man. So like before we get into like the packaging and the ID, you said you went to school in San Francisco. Where did you grow up? Did you grow up in the Bay Area?
I did, just south of the Bay. So I grew up in Carmel, California. So just right on the coast. And my family's like 4 generations Californians. And my grandpa actually taught industrial design in LA for 30 years. And so I had never heard the words industrial design. I just knew that he was a designer, and he would take me to his shop when I'd go visit and stay with them, and we would build things and make things. And I think that's kind of the first, I would say those were my first products, even before I went to ID school, and what kind of incepted in my mind this idea to create was my grandpa just saying like, okay, what do you want to make? I'd go visit, I'd stay with him for a week or two in LA, and he'd say, what do you want to make? And then for those 2 weeks, we'd work on a project together. And I loved that experience of like thinking of something, wanting something that probably I couldn't afford, and then going and actually making it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I was going to ask like where you found your groove, but it sounds like that groove just kind of found you, right? And that's,
I think so.
And then you went to school in San Francisco. At what point did you realize like this is it, man? Like I'm in where I need to be?
The day I walked into the academy.
Yeah.
That day. Day one, it was just on a tour. I went up to San Francisco and I walked in to what they call the warehouse, which is the industrial design school. And it was almost like this revelatory experience for me. And that was it. It's like, this is it. This is what my life is going to be about. and I enjoyed it. Loved it. Loved the academy, worked 20-hour day plus for, 3-4 years. And then started working pretty early on in my academy days, working professionally for different studios.
Awesome. And then at what point did you launch Enlisted?
So I was a lead designer at a studio called New Deal Design in San Francisco, and we were focused just on product. And I really at that point wanted to start branching out into brand and pack and digital experience, and like starting to understand the broader, overall consumer experience. And so I started taking on projects on the side that were not industrial design. So by the time I broke off of New Deal in 2008, I was managing about $200,000 in side work a year, and had clients like Nestle and Clorox and pretty big CPG companies who I was literally having brand managers come to my house for design reviews. and so it just got to the point where my previous business partner and we just decided that, okay, like either we're going to continue to work, 50 hours, 60 hours a week on the side, or we're going to just make the jump. And we decided to make the jump.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man.
I'm thrilled that we did. We were way too young and way too inexperienced, but we were way too hungry to stay put.
Yeah, no, that's great, man. Because, a lot of times with like younger designers, there's always that point where you think like, all right, I can jump off on my own, but I've got insurance. My parents know that I have a job at this company. They're familiar with this company, and fear of jumping, I think totally. I think if you're in your early 20s, man, that's the time to do it. I mean, you should do it at any point in time, but it's just,
I would say in hindsight, like hindsight's 2020, I'm grateful I did what I did. I say to designers that, maybe have moved on from Enlisted or are doing other things that come to me and just say, listen, learn. And when you feel like you've learned enough to do it, then do it, but don't jump too early.
That's awesome, man. And then, so like you've built your team out now. It's funny because I bought Arlo, which is a home security system. And then come to find out later on that you guys actually built it. It was really interesting to me as a consumer going to shelf, seeing it. And it was a clear box that had the cameras mounted on top. And Arlo, if anybody's listening, it's a camera system for your home. And the cameras were mounted to a corrugated box inside of a clear box. It was like this full display. And then when you open it up, the underside had all the different components. The packaging alone is insane. Then to find out that your team worked on the actual cameras and the hardware, and all those pieces, how do you get all of that to come together? How do you divide your teams up to keep like one North Star that everybody's following? All right, let's take a quick second to talk about idpdirect.com. Go right to that website, download the design guides, the sustainability guides, the recyclable icon guide, which basically lists out all the different icons. It gives them to you in vectors. You can drop them right into your artwork right now, today, and go right into production. All right, back to the pod.
The only way that we've found success in doing, or I guess what enables us to do that is a couple of things. First of all, for context, we're a pretty small team. So we have 2 offices, Oakland, California, and Salt Lake City, Utah. And between both locations, we're about 40 people. And so, we're not a massive team, even though we've had the opportunity to create some pretty massive experiences and brands. And Arlo is one of those experiences. And so what we look at with Arlo or with other clients as well is creating teams that are the right experts for the right deliverable. So not all of our projects are brand, pack, digital, product, launch, right? Those are ideal for us because that's what we're suited to do, but not all of our clients hire us for everything that we do. And so we have dedicated expert designers that are strategists, that are brand designers, that are visual designers, that are industrial designers, that are packaging designers. And when we take on an opportunity, we really just handcraft that team to have the right experts on the team. And so the first step really is to understand the consumer. Like it all starts with the consumer and understanding what her or their needs are and unspoken desires are. And so we do quite a bit of primary and secondary research to understand the consumer and the opportunity. And then we create what we call visions. And those are expressed through vision boards. You know, we're familiar with like a mood board. I think mood boards are fine. Vision boards take it a step further, where we begin to develop creative for those visions. And then those visions create the identity or the design North Star for the brand or for the product. And so we have those, we print them out, put them on the wall. Our clients have them, they print them out, put them on the wall. And we always reference the vision to make sure that every deliverable throughout the whole process and the partnership always ladders up to that vision. And it helps us to stay focused.
And how do you...
And it's the same vision board for product and visual design, package design, UX, like it's all the same vision board. And so everybody's headed in the exact same direction.
And then how do your teams communicate? So is it Salt Lake is ID and San Francisco is graphics, or is it just spread out? And how do your ID guys, how do your ID team work with the graphics team?
Mm-hmm. So oddly enough, we have a lot of designers who have been at Enlisted for a long time. And so for lack of better description, they've grown up together. We've grown up together. We're sort of peer based, right? Like I'm 42. We've all kind of just grown up together here at Enlisted. And so we've learned how to communicate. And of course, we've got all the same tools everybody else does. We're always on Slack and text and email and phone or whatever. But it's less about the tools and it's more about an amazing account team that serves more like a product development team than a project management team. Most of our account team come from either a design background or a product background. And so they know exactly when to bring in each of the players throughout the whole process so that they're not working in isolation. Because it's not like we're creating the brand and then a month later or 2 months later, we bring in the industrial design team or vice versa. These things are generally happening at the same time with multiple points of input from the different experts so that it is all laddering up to the same, one cohesive vision.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Just having worked with a variety of different teams, I've been in the scenario where you're meeting with product development, and if you're not in that team, then, you might carry a little bit less weight. Right? And then it's the same thing when you're developing the packaging and then product development. Like, hey, what about this? And all of a sudden, it's just not an even keel, and it's not the best for the consumer.
Yeah, for sure. And from a design standpoint, like historically, if you're a company, what do? You go hire a brand expert, and then you go hire a packaging design agency, and then you go hire an industrial design agency, and then you go hire a digital experience agency, right? And by the time you get to the end, you've had like 5 or 6 different viewpoints for what this thing should be or what this experience should be. And with Enlisted, we're able to do that all together rather than have so many different points of view kind of coming in and championing their topic. Because if you ask an industrial designer what's the most important part of a brand, they're going to say the product. Yeah. Yes, a packaging designer, they're going to say, oh, well, obviously the packaging, yes. And so we've been able to shed that thought here at Enlisted and say, what's the most important thing? The consumer and the experience that we're going to create for them. And all of these different touch points have to ladder up to that deliverable.
Let's go. What, so of all the product you guys have developed, what do you look back on and think of as having been the most complex, not just from packaging, but bringing all of it together and getting it to market?
So we are, and I'll give you a bit of insight into what we're doing. We joined another company last year called pattern.com, and one of the largest, I think, the number one reseller in certain categories on Amazon in the world right now, and number 3 overall in Amazon. So very large kind of e-commerce ecosystem. And we join them so that we can offer better design to their partners, and we can also have access to better data for our partners. What's really exciting about it, and I talked a bit about it earlier with Urbio, is that I've always wanted to launch my own brand. And so what we're doing with Pattern and Enlisted, that we'll announce more this summer, is that we're beginning to acquire brands that already exist today. So some of these are FBA, fulfilled by Amazon brands, and others are retail brands. And these brands over the next few years will range anywhere from $2 million companies to $100 million companies. And what we're doing is we're creating a call it a village in which we'll find exactly the categories that we want to accelerate. We'll find exactly the brands that we want to bring into our village, and then I keep saying we'll, but we're doing it right now, just nobody knows about it. We are going in and repositioning those brands for acceleration. So from a design standpoint, rebranding, redesigning the pack, bringing the right print vendors, helping them to create more sustainable offerings, redesigning the products so that the consumers have a better experience, et cetera, et cetera. And then bringing in the pattern side of it, of the e-commerce, of the 3PL, of the data. And that orchestration of when we bring in one of these new companies into Village, and then we begin to work with them, that orchestration is incredibly exciting, but also incredibly difficult, because we now are answering the questions of, it's not just us presenting design work to the client. This is ours.
Right.
And its future lies in our hands. And it's not just a little side Kickstarter project. These are tens and 50s and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. And so orchestrating that and bringing all of the business unit and the design team and the commerce team and the data team, like bringing all those teams together to create one thing really well, is a design process in and of itself, let alone within the design process of all the different facets of brand and pack and product and et cetera.
Yeah, no, that's insane. I did want to ask you about Pattern. And you mentioned being able to collect the data and everything. I look at packaging, I look at being on the packaging design side, almost as if you're, you almost get a sense of the future, right? Because, anything you're designing today isn't going to be on market for another 6 to 9 months, right? And anybody that you're working with, it's like, these are the trends that I'm seeing. I'm seeing these particular trends today. I know they're going to be in the market in the next year. And that's just from a packaging design side. So collecting the data on the back end from Pattern, what are the key data points that you're pulling that are allowing you to kind of see what the future of e-commerce is, since Pattern is really focused on the e-com side?
Yeah, so they're focused on the future of e-commerce. What I'm focused on is extracting consumer data that is going to give me insight, both functional insight and emotive insight, into the product experiences that they're having today. So I can run the Pattern algorithm, the Pattern tools, digital tools on really any question I have, and I can tap millions of consumers and their reviews. I can tap their functional reviews. I can tap their emotive reviews. I can understand exactly what consumers are searching for, and then exactly what they hovered over or clicked on or paused on before they purchased that product. I can understand how long they spent on the green versus the red versus the gray, and why the gray made it into their cart only to be replaced by that other product that popped up because it was a similar product. Yeah. And I can understand the thought pattern that a consumer is going through as in their path to purchase, in a way that they could never articulate themselves, ever. And then I can bring that data into the Enlisted filter, and I can say, okay, here's the path to purchase. Here's what they thought they were going to buy. Here's what they bought, and here's why. And then here's how they reviewed that a month later or 6 months later. Now let's percolate up the right content, the right data that's going to enable us to create the right experience. And it's not that that data necessarily gives us like a PRD, right? So in a way it does, right? But it, more than anything, it helps us get inside their mind and their mindsets and their desires and appetites that aren't even spoken, to be able to foresee, to your point of the vision, like to be able to foresee the future of what they're going to purchase and then create that. And that's a big thing right now. Like you have all of these wonderful celebrities who call themselves designers, and I love them. It's great. I think the more attention we can bring to the design world, the better. But the truth is they come out and they say, oh, well, I'm a designer. And my argument to that is you're an amazing curator, but you show me what you've created from scratch, from nothing. Take a piece of paper and a Sharpie, and you design something that consumers want. Then we're talking design. But in order to get to a place here, I need to know what that consumer is thinking and needs so that I can design the right product for the right person at the right time.
I don't know. I really like that new will.i.am Honeywell mask. As hideous as it is, I'm kind of digging it.
You know, when it makes it onto the weekend update on SNL, that it's a hit.
That was a pretty sweet mask.
It's pretty awesome. We're going to see a lot of masks that have been in development come out. I hope that people, to some degree, continue to use them.
Yeah. So if I'm, let's say I'm Colgate and I've come up with a new product, but I need packaging that's going to challenge the shelf and challenge e-com, right? Because everybody's ordering things online. So would I come to you? Would I come to the Enlisted team and say, look, this is the product, and we want to pull from this. We want to pull from this data, or that's just going to be part of your process. Any client that comes in, you're just going to look at that data and use that as a
part of our process now. Part of our process. Something that a client would pay $250,000 for last year is now part of our process. It's amazing.
It's insane.
And it's quick, it's fast, and it's accurate. And it really opens. And it's not that we anchor only to that part of the data, but you have the pre-design and then you have the post-design, right? So give us the data that is going to lead us to the right design. Let's design it, and then let's go to consumers and test it. So it's not like it just passes or bypasses the entire validation process. It just gives us better data points in the beginning of the project to be able to create concepts that are going to be on point.
Then what's your involvement at this point, right? I mean, obviously you're the CEO, you're running this, you're doing all this, but are you still getting in and pulling out the Sharpie and sketching out concepts? Like, is that? I can't imagine not doing that.
I guess I can't really show them. I have a page. I have a desk full of chicken scratch just from today's Zooms. Yes, absolutely. So I don't spend the majority of my time designing. I'm CEO of Enlisted and then Chief Design Officer of Pattern. And so my time is spent more in setting the strategic vision for our clients and for the design team, and then enabling them to execute on that. And the truth of the matter is, like, I have better designers than me. And so I see my role, like, I feel like I got to a point a number of years ago where I personally had won all the awards that I'd wanted to. I'd been in retail, it's pretty cool to be able to walk into MoMA and see something that you designed there, right? Packaging that's like, there it is on shelf. And I got to that point where I was just like, gosh, I want others to have these experiences. And that's what I see my biggest role here, is making sure that we're headed in the right direction for each client, for each brand, for each, experience that we're creating, and then enabling my team to be able to do the best work of their career.
Have you ever wondered, how do I reduce my carbon footprint? Should I focus on recycled content or reducing weight first? Which design strategies are the most effective for my products? Triac offers multiple solutions for lifecycle assessment, goals management, reporting, EPR fees, and more. Visit triac.com to connect with our team and register for a free 10-day trial of Eco Impact Compass to get started today.
I guess, where do you pull designers from? How do they approach you? Are they coming out of Art Center, Academy of Art, or is it just global?
Yeah, I mean, all of the above. It's we have designers of the 40 or so people that we have Enlisted right now. Gosh, I don't remember the stat, but I believe it's 40% international, 60% domestic to the US. So very international team. Almost half of our team is international from all over the world. And then we're about 70% female at Enlisted. And that's really important because the vast majority of the brands that we create and the products that we design are targeted toward consumer, toward a female consumer, especially a young female consumer. And so having that personal insight is clutch in many of our programs. But from schools, you name it, man. Every school, we have no bias one to the other. At one point, we were like 12 people and 10 of us were from the academy, but I don't think we have more than 3 or 4 academy folks now, and we got a lot of other schools.
Let's go. Yeah, I've seen some teams where.
But we don't. Oh, go ahead.
No, I've just seen some teams where the creative directors from Art Center, so only Art Center students come in, right?
Totally. Yeah.
But you just fail to get that broader view if everybody kind of has that same training.
That's exactly right. And our partners appreciate that about Enlisted. One thing that's interesting about us too is that even though we have a number of folks on our team, half of our team is senior level, so directors and above. We have a very top heavy staff at Enlisted. In fact, I think on my leadership team, I have 17 or 18 people on the leadership team. And I think in most organizations that would be chaos, but we really do collaborate in a way internally and externally that we've kind of figured out a few things to be able to communicate and collaborate in and create a culture of collaboration that allows us to have some really, good thought, good communication as a group and be productive with it. But we don't have an intern program. In fact, right now, we don't have a single intern at Enlisted. And we get really tempted to hire interns and then we don't. And we just, at the pace that we work and the clients that we work with, a senior staff is generally a better fit.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And is it because of the amount of the investment that goes into interns?
Let's see. So the last 4 interns that we had are now full-time staff and have been here for a couple of years. And so it's just a matter of needing kind of senior thought and experience and stewardship in the programs, and then also not having the bandwidth to be able to really give interns what they need. And so this crop of 4 interns that we had that are now some of our best, designers who've been here for a matter of years, we just continue to just invest in them and lean in with them. But we're not a chop shop. Like we're not we've got 8 interns at any given time because we just grind them into the ground and cut them loose. I've never felt good about that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've had several interns over my years, and just the investment of making sure that they're getting the most out of the experience totally. Sometimes takes away from devoting time to the work, which is the whole purpose of doing it. So with all the data that you're gathering, those guys, patterns, e-com, I want to get your sense of like e-commerce packaging, right? A lot of brand, like there's so many challenges in e-com packaging today. Like for example, polybags, right? Like every brand out there is like, how do we eliminate polybags? What's your response? Just to that, just that really easy question.
Yeah, seriously. Not that we haven't had that conversation 100 times in the studio. So I'm going to go just a step above polybags because polybags aren't alone, right? There's a number of issues that we need to eliminate from packaging, right? Just a simple QR code that somebody's phone can bring to the quick start guide is done. Okay, let's just move beyond that extra paper and ink. Going from partially recycled materials, AKA I want to be able to say recycled material on my packaging.
Yeah.
To actually recyclable materials and truly recyclable in multiple areas is somewhere we need to go. And then moving beyond recyclable, right, to compostable, to using materials that both came from the earth and can go back into it. That's really where we need to go. So kudos to everyone who's converted over to recycled packaging and soy-based inks and all of that wonderful material. But we really need to move to the next steps of less and using materials that are truly sustainable, right? And that's where we look at something like the Allbirds packaging that we launched with them with the Dasher, and that actually just won Red Dot Best of the Best. And it did partly because the design was smart, right? You can fit a size 5 to a size 15 shoe in one box, and it's just one SKU of packaging, and it works. But really, it's because we used bagasse. We used a material that comes literally from the earth, and that is an excess material. It's not something that we had to source as a precious resource, but it's an excess material that we could then mold into the right form. But here's where, to your question of the polybag, we're seeing a ton of really interesting science come out of mushrooms, right? In every form. And I think that mushrooms are a good answer over the next couple of years in their different forms and uses. But here's my call to my team and what we're doing and to the design community in general is we need to partner with manufacturers who are willing to take risks. Because one of the reasons that polybags are so prevalent is because the manufacturer requires them. They won't ship the product without a polybag. And why is that? Because then the product is potentially going to be damaged in some way. And then they're going to get returns. And so in our return culture, our Amazon free returns culture, as consumers, can we just call upon ourselves that if we get a product that has some slight buffings to it, can we just accept that? Is that okay? Right? If we get a package that's been returned and then retaped, can we just accept that? And is that okay? Right? As consumers. And if so, then we can begin to help our vendor partners, our print partners, the vast majority of which are in Asia, be able to say, okay, yes, we're okay with that form factor because it uses 30% less material. Yeah, but it's not engineered structurally to be able to withstand a 25-foot drop. I'm okay with that. Okay. And then, well, we can't get rid of the poly bag because you're going to sue us. Well, hey, let's not sue each other. And let's, yes, use materials that are better, but also just use materials that aren't needed, like the poly bag in most cases. I know this is idealistic. I know that, and I'm not stupid, and I'm not straight out of school, and I'm not this chipper little, designer who just thinks that they can just ship the product on its own in a whatever. It's not that. It's that I feel like if we partner better with our manufacturers and we have a better understanding of the consumer and what they are going to push back on or what they're not going to, then we can begin to eliminate some of the waste and some of the materials that have become absolute standards, like the poly bag.
No, that's great. And that kind of goes to Allbirds, right? Like this Allbirds packaging. When this ships, are those shoes in a poly bag?
No.
Okay. So Allbirds has been able to do it, right? These shoes are in this molded fiber insert with the paperboard sleeve. This seems to be like the direction that shoe brands should be looking at. I would ask, is the fact that this box doesn't collapse, because a lot of times when you talk to brands about like a rigid box that's, assembled, like, well, I can't collapse it. I need to collapse it for shipping. I would assume something like this, you can nest, which balances out a little bit, right? Yeah,
it does.
And, what about the fact that it's black? Is it a carbon black, or is it a dyed black? What is the what's the pushback on like this Allbirds?
Yeah, so the pushback, the only pushback that we've gotten publicly is around the color black. So you pinpointed it. That was the original concept was not black. It was a natural, bagasse color. And the reason that we went with black was because the entire launch was black. The Dasher kind of, primary color was black. And so we had never done, and our packaging partner Voyon had never done black in a bagasse material. And so we developed in partnership with Voyon, and Voyon is amazing, an amazing packaging vendor. You know them, I mean, we've all worked with them, and really developed a veg-based dye that we could dye the bagasse to get to a true black and still be compostable. And that was it took us a while. But that was exciting to be able to get to that place so that we could hold true to, to the real benefit of this packaging. And the engineers pushed back a bit on the packaging on the form, in that it wasn't structurally sound, right? It needed more draft, or it needed it needed more structure to it, and it just didn't, and it didn't need to be overly engineered. It just didn't. And so we prototyped it and broke them, and prototyped them and broke them and showed that it could be a very simple form, and that the draft angle could give us the support we needed to be able to nest, to be able to ship, to be able to be enough. Okay, it didn't need to last a year or 2 years or 3 years. It needed to last to that person's door, and then it needed to be able to either be planted or put in the compost.
Nice. I like the concept of being enough, right? And it goes back to your previous comment in terms of just not having to overdo things, right? We don't need a polybag for everything to protect ourselves. An engineer looking at the Allbirds pack would think, we need to put in some structural shoulders in there, right? We need some ridges. Any of these.
Oh, trust me, we saw that come back. We saw that exact thing come back.
Yeah, it's like we need ridges like crazy. We need ribs all over this thing, but it kills the design. And you're right, you don't always need it. You don't need a 25-foot drop, man. So that's awesome, dude. So when you're looking to hire, or I guess before I even talk about hiring, you guys have grown. You guys are Oakland, you're Salt Lake, you're now part of Pattern, and are you going to be opening like a China office? Are you going to grow internationally? How does that look?
Yeah. So fortunately, so Pattern has 18 offices all around the world already. And so we have an office in Hong Kong. We have 2 offices in mainland China. We have an office in the UK, Australia, all over the US. And as Enlisted grows, it's very likely that we can leverage the Pattern offices to grow. We have clients in Copenhagen that are very keen on us opening a Copenhagen office, but we don't have a Pattern office there. So we'll see how that pans out. But here's the thing with us opening offices. For me, Enlisted growth has never been about headcount, and it's never been about location count. It really isn't. It's about growing in the right ways with the right people so that we can create these experiences. So usually when a studio is acquired by another company, it's with this hyper growth mindset. And it's not, this move for us was not about hyper growth so we can grow Enlisted. It's about us coming together so that we can offer better services to Pattern partners, Enlisted partners, and eventually acquire and launch our own brand. So are we going to open other offices? I don't know. Would it benefit us to open a New York office or an East Coast office? Possibly. But I think that we're going to be second guessing that or rethinking that as we go back into the studios later this year and have flexible locations. Is it necessary to even open those offices anymore?
Right. Yeah. I mean, nowadays it doesn't really matter.
Everything's changing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think what does matter though for us, and this is a heated debate in the studio, is working remote versus working live. And there is something about design, especially tangible design, right? Out of box experiences, creating die lines, prototyping, testing, creating products, 3D prints of products that you need to use. Like that's very hands-on work. When we get, pre-press that we need to look at in the right light and then with the right tools, like that's stuff that we need to be together for. We need to be in a location for. And so the studios have stayed open throughout COVID, not necessarily to go work at, but to utilize the shops and the tools, the 3D printers, the laser cutters, CNC, the lighting, like to be able to still function. And so we are not going to be a fully remote team, so that we can be together, using these tools and collaborating together.
No, and like just over this past year, being fully remote has been amazing, just in the workload that you can accomplish with zero interruptions when you want to. But then I look back to, sitting there sketching out some concepts and having a product developer walk by on his way to grab a cup of coffee, and they look over, and all of a sudden, like, they just have a light bulb moment. They're like, hey, what if you do this?
Yeah.
And you have that conversation, and they keep going. You're like, holy crap, this changed my world today.
Yeah, exactly.
You miss that, that interaction.
Spot on. It's exactly right. And we miss each other. We miss each other socially, but we miss each other in that creative process that you just mentioned. And those little moments are so valuable. They really are. I miss it. I feel like I miss my team. We've hired, I think we're at 11 people now since COVID, since we closed. And I want to work with these folks. I want to be able to sit down and sketch with them. And so what it requires of us is that we're even more proactive of reaching out to ask those questions. But you're right. What we're missing is when that product manager walks by, or creative director or design director walks by and just says, that's amazing. What if we did this? And it changes the trajectory of it.
For sure, man. Well, Beau, man, I appreciate you being on, man. If anybody's looking to contact you, reach out to Enlisted, what's the best place for them to get you?
Yeah, it's enlisteddesign.com. And we've got a portal there to reach out to us. If you're local, feel free to stop by the studio once we're open again and say hi. But we're always looking for great talent and great client partners. So really appreciate you having me on, and hope that this was helpful to people.
I can't imagine that it's not, because I think as designers we get so focused on our one niche, whether it's just packaging, and we fail to realize how much broader of a just a system it is, right? From product development, design, engineering, like we all have to work together. And I love that Enlisted does that from start to finish.
Absolutely. Well, thanks. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll be talking.
Hey, sounds good. Have a good one.
Thanks.
See ya.
All right. Bye-bye.